Greetings, travelers. So, you know how as kids you would pick like a specific historical moment like the Titanic or the Hindenburg disaster and become fascinated with that? That's what this episode is about. And if you've ever taken a history class, you know history can get pretty gory. So, this is your content warning. Also, as usual, there will be swearing, so viewer discretion is advised.
It's that bowl. I'm gonna punch her.
Hey,
She deserves it. Not true. Not
I'm
true.
right here.
Sorry, I'm talking to editing Jordan's ghost. I don't know what this thing is that keeps talking to me.
The ghost of Jordan past.
I think you mean the Ghost of Jordan future if it's the editing Jordan.
Oh yeah, that's true. It would be future.
Speaking of future and
Unless.
past, just kidding. Hey everybody, welcome to the Nat 1 podcast, aka Nope, because nope, you're not gonna want to hear what we're about to have to say. I'm Pertusit.
I'm Levi.
And I'm Jordan.
Today is our history episode. We're gonna talk about
Wow, that was
history.
a good segue.
Yeah, it was. And that was a pretty nice connection between the two topics as well. But we're going to talk about history stuff today. And as some of us may have noticed, I'm not sure if we actually mentioned on the podcast yet, but Levi is a history major. So feel compelled to...
He's the educator boy.
Yeah. So take it away, Levi. Let's start talking about history.
In the beginning, in the beginning.
Is there a gas leak?
In the beginning.
Huh?
Should we call someone?
I
think our history major's broken, dude.
We need a new one.
The beginning. In the beginning.
There we go. That's it.
Medical Jordan, save him. New Jordan.
Where did the medical Jordan? You guys realize you can only play D&D, right? That's not a thing that I
can't. The reason it was when I was watching it is because like there's some guy who's standing next to him and he keeps going like, listen very closely. The president is speaking, and he just keeps going in the beginning, and
I'm telling you, by like episode 25, there's going to be a whole universe of Jordans that exists for each and every
Jordan verse.
The Jordan verse.
That's our version of NFTs.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know if you want that, Jordan, if you remember our earlier promise.
No.
We're just going to have Jordan make a pose and take a picture of that, and then we'll slap a bunch of like JPEG images of different outfits on her, and that's the NFTs.
Absolutely.
Rarest Jordan is construction worker OSHA violator Jordan. One of one. Rarest
NFT in existence.
Only way to get her is to confirm that you've committed an OSHA violation in the past month.
You have to out yourself to OSHA.
Yes.
I'll never work again, but at least I got this NFT.
Silly man.
That's the artist Jordan is you have to prove you're not a niche Kapoor to purchase it. That's a niche art world joke. But
I understood that reference.
You did?
I did.
Oh boy. Well, good thing it's a history episode, even though it's like not kind of history. It's like sort of history. It's more art.
Discourse.
Yeah. Discord. Not sponsored.
Discord.
So today we're going to be talking about. I'll do our little intro. Welcome to the Nat 1 podcast, aka Nope, because nope, you're not going to want to hear what we're about to say. I'm Pertusit.
I'm the Nat 1 Clipper, also known as Knock.
The what now?
Knock.
The Knock.
I'm Jordan. I have a name.
I am the Knock, also known as Levi.
You are the one who knocks.
He is.
It's an anagram. You rearrange my name and then you get Knock.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
The Levi is silent. Which is a great Vespa into our next topic.
What?
We're talking about history today.
Indeed we are. And hopefully Levi won't have another stroke.
Listen,
Listening.
that was just the beginning.
That's dang, he's right. He's spitting. Or should I say he's spinging?
Ah.
No. History obviously has had several impacts on D&D, whether it be like historical representations of creatures like dragons and nymphs and all that stuff, or actual history like people have swords and armor and stuff.
Yep.
Actually, fun fact, one of the original tabletop games that became D&D, there's a documentary about this on Amazon, go check it out. One of the original tabletop games that would become D&D came out of a historical map game, not like the one Levi plays.
Wasn't it called something in chainmail?
That was the original conception of D&D, but the actual playing of tabletop role-playing games came from playing like war games like Risk, but not Risk. It was a different game. But yes, chainmail was the original inception of D&D.
Wow. So yeah, hence why we're going to talk about history a bit today. But you know us by now. Come on, we've had a few episodes. We're not just going to sit here and lecture to you and be like, except that's exactly what we did. We're going to instead talk to you about some of the funniest or coolest moments of history that we want to talk about. These are moments you might already know, might be things you've never heard of. And also, Levi's the only one here that's a history major, so take the rest of ours with a grain of salt, how true it is.
I mean,
my information is only coming from my elementary school hyperfixations.
From a history major's perspective, you should also take mine with a grain of salt, because the academia of history is constantly evolving. It's just like any other science. Just because it's more based in the humanities, we learn new stuff constantly. Although take mine with less salt, because I am the one learning about
it. Exactly. Salt levels is gonna. I know audio listeners.
I need less iodine than they do.
So get your scales out at home. Get your salt ready. Make sure you appropriate 3 cups for each of us. And now get ready.
And prepare to measure over the course of this hour-long episode.
There will be a test. This will be on the final.
Yes.
So I feel like it's only fitting that we should start with our history major. I was going to say young history major, but he's like 2 years younger than me. 1 year.
I mean, that's still younger.
True. So young history major, Padawan history major. Why don't you tell us about one of your favorite moments from history? Just explain it to begin, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of discussion.
Well, I love history. So it's really hard for me to pick a specific moment that I think is amazing, awesome, cool, wonderful. I don't even have a thing that got me into history. I've just kind of always liked it. So in preparation for this episode, I looked up something that was very recent that I had learned about myself in history that I did not know about yet.
Really?
Because yes, in college right now, I'm taking a class that's on the early modern period, and it's a global early modern period class. So we talk about the globe and not just Europe or European centric stuff or American centric stuff.
Quick question for the uneducated. It's definitely not me, but the uneducated people at home. What is the actual history definition of the early modern period for real?
Well, see, that's funny because like I just said before we started, take everything with a grain of salt, because we're still learning and formulating our own hypotheses and theories about what it is. No one agrees.
No one agrees on that one.
No one in the field of history agrees. There are multiple groups that agree with each other, but we haven't formed a broad consensus. My point of view that I subscribe to is the early modern period begins in the late 15th century, which is the 1400s, with the discovery of the Americas, because that propels. There are other people that argue it starts before that, because we actually see a little bit of industrialization in late medieval Europe and around the Netherlands before that. But yeah, I subscribe to the idea that it begins roughly when the Americas are discovered, because that marks the beginning of Europe's rise on the international level and overcoming other foreign powers, and it's the birth of colonialism and all that, those things which are
Okay.
pretty much signifying of the early modern period.
Yeah. All right.
So just preceding the early modern period, I learned about this because, just like in this podcast episode, my professor was like, what's a cool factoid you know about history and perhaps the early modern period, if you will, for the history majors in the class. Those of you who aren't history majors, you can just say anything, but the history majors, I want you to pick something from this topic. And I was like, Tang Dynasty China.
Oh boy.
Tang Dynasty China, which is right before the early modern it ends right before the early modern period, roughly. There was a series of events known as the An Lushan Rebellion. And just like luckily, I had managed to stumble across this information right before I got into this class, so I could tell everyone about this amazing and awesome fact. There's this siege. There is a siege in the An Lushan Rebellion called the Siege of Suyang. And in the Siege of Suyang, I'm just going to read the Wikipedia casualties and losses.
Okay.
So belligerents, Tang Dynasty and the Yan rebels, they were called the Yan rebels. Strength, Tang Dynasty had 9,800 forces besieging Suyang, which had the Yan rebels had 150,000 soldiers. Casualties and losses, the Tang are attacking, the Yan are defending. The Tang took 9,600 deaths out of 9,800. The Yan took 60,000 deaths out of 150,000. And also 20 to 30,000 civilians were eaten.
What?
Specifically eaten.
By
the siege of Suyang resulted in a prolonged state of famine, according to the Old Book of Tang. So in order to solve this famine, one of the commanders of the Yan forces decided,
No, don't say it.
We're gonna kill the civilians and eat them.
Oh!
So, Prachusa, imagine you're me in the Discord at like 11:30 at night, and this is the first thing you hear.
So, like, early modern period, you said. I wasn't there, obviously, or is it obvious? But, like, there had to have been a better call than eat the people, right? Right?
Well,
I mean,
let
you
me
would
read.
think.
This is a piece from a primary source called the Old Book of Tang.
Okay, primary
Yin
source.
Ziki had besieged the city for a long time. The food in the city had run out. The dwellers traded their children to eat and cooked bodies of the dead. Fears were spread and worse situations were expected. At this time, Zhang Jun took his concubine out and killed her in front of his soldiers in order to feed them. He said, quote, "You have been working hard at protecting this city for the country wholeheartedly. Your loyalty is uncompromised despite the long-lasting hunger. Since I can't cut out my own flesh to feed you, how can I keep this woman and just ignore the dangerous situation?" All the soldiers cried, and they did not want to eat.
I would imagine.
Zhang Jun ordered them to eat the flesh.
Whoa!
Afterwards, they caught the women in the city. After the women were run out, they turned to the old and young males.
The women and children first, I guess.
And the old.
And the old.
20,000 to 30,000 people were eaten. People always remained loyal.
Golly.
See, this is the kind of thing that gets talked about in our Discord very late at night with very little prompting.
True.
Yeah. There's that one, which is a good one, and then there's also
I wouldn't say it's a good one,
It's
Levi.
not a good,
there's the Taiping Rebellion, which is like
more cannibalism.
I don't remember exactly the dates of the Taiping Rebellion, but that one's more interesting just because of who's leading it. It's also the bloodiest war in human history.
Oh wow!
It's the civil war in China. Let me see if I can.
This is how we get a content strike.
The Taiping Rebellion.
Just so we're clear, we do not endorse cannibalism on this podcast.
I want you two to guess. I want you two to guess how many casualties occurred because of the Taiping Rebellion. I'll tell you the date.
Okay.
It occurred from 1850 to 1864.
Okay.
So this actually was occurring at the exact same time as the American Civil War. It overlapped with the American Civil War by 4 years.
If this is like the biggest, deadliest one ever.
It's not the deadliest, but by like proportion for the time and the global population at the time, if we're doing it proportionally, I believe it is the deadliest war.
Inflation.
Yes.
So if we're
Also, it's
going
one of
with
those
that-
ones where because it's so far back, we have like a wide range that we're pretty sure it's between this number or this number. So you can do that too if you want.
Okay, Jordan, you have a good guess? I'm
I
thinking
just said a lot.
a
I will
lot.
give you this hint. It is in double digits.
Okay, that helps. This is all for a rebellion too, right?
I realize that didn't help as much as it.
No, it didn't.
You'll understand why I meant what I meant by that once I tell you. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm gonna go with you said double digits, right?
Yeah.
Wait, double digits. Hold on. Wait a minute. 13? What? Wait.
69.
No. No.
Wait.
That's not
Wait
what
a
I
minute.
meant. That's
You
not what I meant
tricker,
by
you-
double. That's not what I meant by
Duddle.
double digits. That's not what I meant by double digits.
Levi's about to lose his talking privileges.
You tricksy son of a gun. You
I've
done got
not-
me.
It's not what I meant. I actually meant to help you. I actually tried and I just messed up.
Okay. So wait, what's the actual digit count then?
8.
Oh wow.
In the 8
Okay.
digits.
Golly. That's a lot. Okay.
You'll understand why I said double once we get past this part.
I'm assuming it's all twos. I'm gonna go like 2000 something something something.
8 digits, bro.
I can't count that high.
I can't. That's like
I
a
am
lot
a
of
writer. I am not a math.
You
That's
could
so
count that
many
high eventually
D4s.
if you tried.
Levi, you've seen me try to do math.
Steam starts coming out and everything is crazy.
I
I'm
bet
gonna
TJ's counted that high before.
Yeah, I'm
True.
bet TJ can do that. Yeah.
He's watched that not much Naruto. I'm gonna say 75 million.
You actually overestimated.
Ah!
Was I right with all twos?
No.
Damn it.
Casualties and losses between 20 and 30 million.
Wow.
So I was the closest, is what you're saying.
This ain't Price is Right rules. Price
Yeah,
is
it is.
Wrong rules.
Yeah, so if I go real quick and do a global population in 1864,
Yeah. Like 2 people, I think.
in 1864, okay, we don't have an exact number for 1864, but we do have an 1850, which was 1.2 billion people.
Oh,
So if we do some quick math,
yeah. That's.
I just told you I can't do that.
Let me think.
divided by.
You said it was 1.2 billion?
Oh, I did that wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's
Like 1/160th or so?
one sec. I'm doing bad math here. Wait. Okay. What's 1.2 billion divided by if we're lowballing 20 million?
20 million. Let's see.
1, 2, 0, 0. Oh, give me the number. Just copy paste it.
I think that's 1/60th.
Yeah. Yes, because I just got 60. Yeah, that was 1/60th of the global population.
That's crazy. That's.
Yeah, Jordan, you're probably gonna have to cut out a lot of that dead air.
A note from editing, Jordan. Yes, I did.
Just cut to the part where I say 1/60th of the global population.
No, I'm gonna leave it
1/60th.
all in. Told you I would.
Oh,
This is a
doing
threat.
what with it?
But also, that's not the craziest part.
That's not.
It's not the craziest part.
More
The craziest-
cannibalism?
The craziest part is the guy who led this rebellion.
Grant.
No,
Steve.
the guy who led this rebellion is it Hong? Yeah, I think it's Hong Xiuhuan.
That sounds
Yes, leader of the Taiping Rebellion against the Qing dynasty.
familiar.
Visions and iconoclasm. In 1837, he attempted and failed the imperial examinations for the 3rd time, leading to a nervous breakdown. He was
Oh,
delirious
no.
for days, and at this point, his family feared for his life. While convalescing, Hong dreamed of visiting heaven, where he discovered that he possessed a celestial family distinct from his earthly family, which included a heavenly father, mother, elder brother, sister-in-law, wife, and son. Blah, 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 blah. Blah,
I need
blah,
to get
blah,
me
blah,
some
blah.
of that, dude.
Heavenly Father gave him a new name, blah, blah, blah. Hong came to believe that they had given him the key to interpreting his visions. His celestial father was God the Father. The elder brother that he had seen was Jesus Christ.
Dang, dude.
and he had been directed to rid the world of demon worship. This interpretation led him to conclude that he was the literal son of God and younger brother to Jesus.
If I had a nickel for every time that happened during the Qing dynasty, I'm gonna guess and hope it's only one. But if it's more than one, bro.
Hong appeared to have genuinely believed in his ascent to heaven and divine mission as well. Like he wasn't just a con artist. So he was crazy and got lucky because at the time when he did this rebellion, a lot of people were fed up with the Qing. And pretty much it was crazy, but like I guess charismatic enough that people were like, this Christianity thing's got some stuff going for it. And he was preaching a horribly like misinterpreted version of Christianity that put himself as Jesus too, pretty much.
Yeah. Electric Boogaloo?
Yeah. It's the part where I think he lost the sheep or the people, as it were, his flock. He probably lost them when he said, eat the women, then the elderly. Sorry, stories are getting crossed a little bit.
And yeah, so he ended up causing a 14-year civil war in China that took the lives of 20 to 30 million people because he thought he was the brother of Jesus.
Charming.
Dang, dude.
Sounds like a real fun guy.
Oh, the visual watchers hate you to death can see that I have my head in my hands at this remark.
There aren't.
I see them. They're behind my screen right now. Who else's
what
eyes would
are
be there?
you?
Audio listeners, I hear your thoughts.
But yeah, so that's Levi's cool, interesting history fact. Before we completely move on,
are we saying cool and interesting or horrifying and gruesome?
It is interesting, maybe not cool, but I would say it is interesting.
Interesting, yes. I'm not.
I thought it was interesting.
Well, before we move on completely, let's discuss it. I hesitate to say let's discuss it in detail. Let's discuss the implications with it as far as D&D is concerned. Because don't click away yet. No, wait.
I don't know how you make this D&D relevant.
No, I can see easily how this is D&D relevant.
See, okay, this is something I actually want to talk about on this broader platform because I think it's worth discussing. In our campaign, which you will eventually be able to hear more about later, with Levi, in Vivia 2, we had a moment or like an extended period of time in the game all about a siege. Didn't resort to cannibalism, but as far as we know,
it didn't last that long. Oh God, I hope it didn't. Levi,
no. But obviously throughout history, sieges has been a long-standing thing. Mm-hmm. Like that's been the downfall of several nations. Well, maybe not nations, but like kingdoms, fiefdoms, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not really represented very well in D&D, I don't think. Again, visual watchers and audio listeners, I have not read up much on the official lore, especially of any edition, but 5e I'm most comfortable with. And I don't remember hearing about some crazy sieges that lasted months that are playable campaign settings or anything. So
I would say it's because it's hard to have a siege be exciting if it's going to be like a real siege.
I don't know. Ours is pretty fun.
Well, ours was not like a real siege. So how sieges generally worked in history was Army 1 sits in place with big walls. Army 2 surrounds said place with big walls. They wait to see who starves to death first. That is typically how sieges went. And usually because the people in the walled place have no access to the outside world, they're the ones who starve to death first. But generally the way it goes is the outside army doesn't want to attack because if they can just sit there and wait, why wouldn't you do that instead? The only way you usually get like assaults during sieges is if word comes that an army is coming to relieve the siege and they need to, like, it's vital that this city is taken or this castle is taken and it could end the war or something like that. That's when you get assaults and stuff like that happening. But as a DM, as a person running a campaign where I'm trying to have an action-packed story that you guys are heroes and involved in, I didn't want you to sit in a city for literally, because in the real world, this could happen, years as a siege went on.
And like, I wonder, obviously they haven't done it, but I wonder if it could be done well. Like, could you imagine a campaign setting? Oh, maybe not a campaign setting, that'd be crazy, but like an adventure setting, like Lamop, where perhaps you're in a sieged city or besieged city, or you come across one and you have to decide, are you going to help with the besieging? Or are you going to try to go in and break the siege apart, or
It
this, that,
very
or the
well,
other?
I think it very well could be done easily. I actually am kind of surprised now I think about it that this hasn't been incorporated into more adventures, but it could be easily done in that way you said, where you encounter a siege and it's like something that's been going on for a while. It's a siege that's been happening in the world for a while, and it's like you guys are the ones who are going to resolve it now. Now that it's been going on for months, it's pretty close to an ending point, but like the adventurers, the players, they're the ones who are going to determine who
Yeah.
wins, who comes out on top.
Yeah.
That could be something that's very easy to be done, and I'm surprised I haven't heard of it more.
Yeah. Now,
Also, it would be interesting though, I think, to have an adventure that takes place in like a city that's under siege.
that I was thinking, if you really flesh out the city like they did in Descend to Avernus, that
Yeah.
I feel like you could have a lot of potential for play there, where you have to investigate the whole dang city, not just tavern and out, like in
Yeah.
most.
Yeah. That
But
could be an interesting concept. And that's the thing too, you don't even necessarily have to be the conflict being the siege. It's just
yeah,
the setting is the city is under siege. There could be something else going on entirely that the
true.
party deals with. Or it could be the siege. That you could
Well, I mean, or even like you kind of loosely connected something weird is going on, like Descent into Avernus, like
Yeah.
something weird is going on with the city, and by resolving that conflict, that gives them the edge in the
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah.
Which I also wanted to ask you about this, Jordan, because there's some, part of the whole thing about the siege is like the supplies and the food, really, like with the cannibals. But in Olympus, I got you that boon that allows you to just summon food, because a lot of the time
Not
in D&D,
anymore.
not anymore, but a lot of time in 5e, eating food and stuff is hand waved. You got the food,
True.
you get it.
It's
So I was
expected.
yeah, I'm like, it's really not a big deal. I'll give this boon those you got food, and then I have the other one, so that way it kind of compensates for that feeling.
Mhm.
But in a siege-like setting or in a world, that's not the only example in D&D where food can be spawned magically. There's the whole dang spell.
There is.
like,
You got
create food and water.
and you also have the druid spell Goodberry.
Yeah,
I feel like
and
that would be an interesting roleplay opportunity for clerics and druids to shine, because then they would become solely responsible for the food production.
That's
in a
actually
siege.
why I don't know if you guys know about this, but that's actually why a lot of DMs ban the spell Goodberry.
Is that
Really?
why?
Yes, because there are when people do like survival type campaigns where it's like
Yeah.
there's a specific example I'm thinking of, which is Z Bashaw or Bashu, however you pronounce it. He's a YouTuber who does the animated spellbook series, and he has this one that he did one on, which was
Oh.
specifically about Goodberry, which is he and two other people they started as prisoners, and their goal was to break out of the prison, and that was the beginning of the campaign. And right when they got out of prison, their food problems were solved because he could just do Goodberry over and over again. So the DM was immediately like, okay, you're not allowed to do that anymore, because it was supposed to be they like all had
Survival.
sat down beforehand and they talked about it, and they were like, this is going to be a survival campaign where you're supposed to be like roughing it and you're going to have to get gritty to survive and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So he ruined one of the points of the campaign by doing that. And that's a big reason why a lot of other DMs who like the nitty gritty survival stuff also ban that spell and just say, no, it doesn't exist.
I guess that depends on your play style then, because like we were saying earlier, we don't really deal with like, yeah, you have rations, yeah, you use them, like we don't really worry about it too much. Just like usually we mention it once along, right? Yeah, we're eating. We don't really keep track, but I guess that goes along with the same people that do like long rests or short rests, and long rests or
longer rests.
Longer rests. like the system that I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, like instead of
long
8
rests are like
hours,
downtime,
or like
over the course
Or
of
a
a
week,
week
yeah.
instead of a day.
And I
One
mean,
of
if that's
these
what you
days-
vibe with, like, yeah.
Yeah.
we should try that one of these days. Not a whole campaign like that, but maybe like a few sessions or something, just to
One
see.
shot. One
Just
shot.
try it.
I'm just to give you guys a little bit of insider information.
Oh boy.
I am planning to be more realistic in the next campaign that I DM, but not to that degree by any means. But just like I'm planning on probably still this one's the big being tested out one, because we have never played like this. For you audio listeners, love you to death. We never play
Love you
with
to
coin
death.
weight. We never play with coin weight, and we never play with
True.
encumbrance.
No.
And I think we might try that one for Vivia 3 just to see how it goes. Partially because as DM, I'm like, that could cause them to have to like go to a bank and cash in money and that could just cause some RP interaction. I'm like, yeah, I like RP. I like that. Let me force them into doing it more.
Taryn and TJ are gonna have your head on a spike by the first session.
TJ, Mr. Walking Armory over here is gonna riot.
That and what was the other one? There was another one that I was gonna talk about, and now I've forgotten it because I talked about coin weight.
You said encumbrance as well.
Encumbrance, yes.
Ammo?
Not ammo. Oh, that's
we keep track of our ammo.
Yes, rations. That was the one I was talking about. Thinking about because Jordan said it. I'm gonna do like a light system where it's like you don't keep track of them. I'm just gonna assume every time you go into a town and then leave it that you buy enough supplies for yourselves to survive on the road. So pretty much what it's gonna be is every time you go in and out of a town, I'm gonna have you subtract a certain amount, a small sum of money.
Understandable.
From the supplies.
Broke.
From the supplies. Well, buying
Taryn's
rations isn't that expensive.
Okay,
it's gonna be a thing though where every time you guys leave a town, I'm gonna say, okay, so as you guys are leaving the town, how are you divvying up the expenses for like supplies? And then we're gonna determine that. And if you guys force Taryn to pay for everything every time, yeah, he'll be broke.
We're gonna force the
but also it won't be that much. It'll be like maybe for 5 people. It'll also depend on where you're going and what you expect to need. But it'll probably never get up to a gold because
hold on. Scheming real quick. Could we convince TJ, since TJ's character is from another time, that it's more expensive and then pocket the extra? I feel like that's something that we could do.
Well, I mean, I'm Warforged gaming, so I don't need to eat, as Levi described it in this setting. He says that I have the craving, so like I'll just be like, yeah, just don't buy any food for me because I need my precious 2 copper. And the coin as well.
Or you could just be like fresh cut grass and just eat the copper.
You could do that. I will allow it.
I think I'm gonna put that idea in the bank though. I'm gonna try to scam TJ out of his money.
Levi, look, it's working. She's already using the bank.
Good. Finally.
It is my goal for campaign 3 to steal money from at least every party member at least once.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah.
There's
Can't wait to see how that's gonna go down with everyone, honestly.
We get a little off the rails, but I wanted to bring this up because there's a new Strixhaven spell. It's actually not new anymore, really, but I'm so excited to use it. It's called Vortex Warp or something like that. Whoa.
That's my warp noise.
Warp. It's Misty Step, but I can't use it on myself.
Yeah.
You Misty Step someone away from you?
Or towards me, or whatever.
Or somewhere. Yeah.
So if we're fighting a big monster that's really far, if we're fighting like a lich or a wizard that's really far away and slinging spells, Jordan, I could throw you on top of him from 90 feet away.
Please plan to do that because I love that.
I was gonna say or pull him towards you, but it would honestly be the better idea to throw someone because if you're pulling, it would probably require a save.
Well, it requires a con save.
If you're throwing, they could just choose to fail.
And also with the swashbuckler feat, it would be better if you just threw Ren by themselves at the enemy. Yeah.
Now I gotta say, because I found this on a subreddit today, I'm a sorcerer as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I can get the meta magic known as Distant Spell.
Oh God!
The base range for Vortex Warp is 90 feet.
I'm already hating this. No,
this is a great plan.
No,
this is a great plan.
I can double the range.
Listen
so
to
Jordan,
what they're doing to me right now. I can't.
Hell yeah!
Have shit.
It's a second level spell. So when we're like at level 8, I can cast it more than once. So there's 2 enemies. If there's enemies on either side, Jordan, you go to one side
back and
boom, boom, boom.
I love that so much. Please.
Oh, I fully
ranged encounters. Bye, out the window. Can't do those anymore.
Haha, we finally tricked him. We tricked him into getting rid of ranged encounters.
Finally. If I ever find out, Jordan, that you stole money from me, though, if we're ever on a cliffside combat, Ren, hurry, go! I'll throw you to them. Why is there no ground beneath me?
To be fair, okay. You are probably I plan on shaking Taryn down as much as possible. That's the big thing.
Me too.
Oh my God. He's gonna become Punished Terran from this
Punish
campaign.
Terran.
Wait, me and him, this is what I'm gonna do. Terran and I are gonna pretend that Medley gets killed somehow. But
Oh,
really, she doesn't die. She comes back with a
She's
vengeance.
the big bad.
her name's backwards now. It's Ildem.
Ill them, kill them. It's a
like Red
metaphor.
Rum. Yeah, it's poetry because it rhymes.
No, I'm gonna shake down Terra, and I feel like we can somehow convince. Well, okay, if TJ doesn't metagame, because here's the thing: in theory, you should be able to convince a kobold out of time that you should that they should give you money. But
Yeah.
TJ probably won't. I
Well,
wonder if I could get Dylan to give me
if-
money.
We might
If
be able
he's
to get
if he's a logical kobold, he could just go to any person that's not you and ask them about money. In the
He'll do
world.
that.
Well, here's the thing, Levi. Ren can be any person that's not them, so I
True.
can make sure that works.
But what if you're but like, okay, but you're telling me like if you're in like a marketplace and you're standing in front of a merchant and he just turns 90 degrees to them and asks them and they
See-
tell him the truth.
Here's the thing, Levi.
Then
That's
I
when I
stab the
use
merchant.
vortex warp and I teleport the merchant and Jordan.
We swap places real quick.
You're gonna love this spell. You're gonna love it, Levi.
I
I
already
don't
love
think I
this.
am. I
Okay, we gotta move on. We'll be off
True.
the track a little bit.
God dang.
I just thought that was worth discussing. It's fun. Okay.
We went from cannibalism to vortex warp.
Okay. So Jordan, you
Yes.
give us
vortex
one of
gore.
your favorite history moments, history gaming.
Oh goodness. I don't want to say favorite because that sounds horrible.
Okay. Give us an interesting one.
The one that I used to be upset. Okay, everybody had their like Titanic phase, so I won't do that one because that's kind of. We also have a fun story about Titanic
Yes, we
history
do.
thing. The one that I used to be absolutely obsessed with and would research obsessively as a small child was the Radium Girls because I just found that fascinating. It's also horrifying.
I actually don't know anything about this, but it certainly
Anything.
sounds interesting.
Okay.
Anything that has to do
So-
with radiation is absolutely terrifying.
This is true.
Mhm.
It's one of the original OSHA violations. So it was like in the 20s and women were entering the workforce. And so one of the popular jobs was for women to go and work for the American Radium Company. And they would paint luminous watch faces. And it was for World War One. That's when that was. It was for World War One, so that soldiers could see their watches in the trenches, and so that they could read like watches and compasses and things. And they were
Cool.
paid by the dial for how many dials that they would finish during the day, and they would paint them with luminous paint that was made with radium because radium glows in the dark. And so what ended up happening is to paint these watch dials to get the fine tip point that you would need to paint the numbers. The technique that they were taught was they would like lick the brushes to keep the point, which is how they were taught. And they were told that this was entirely safe and
Yep.
that this was entirely like that it would be fine. The paint's
Yep.
completely
Oh, no.
non-toxic. It's completely safe. Everything's fine.
2
And
days
so
later,
they were,
my tongue fell out.
well, that's
Dang.
the next part of the story. So these women were led to believe that this paint was absolutely safe and non-toxic and they would be fine. And so it was also a fashion of the time to put radium in makeup because of the
That's
luminous
right.
properties. And so people would paint this on their nails. They would use it as eyeliner. They would paint their teeth to make them glow. And
Oh.
so over time, these girls started to get very, very sick.
How did mankind
What?
survive past the 1800s?
Yeah,
the
that should have been our
Victorian,
end.
the
That-
Victorian period was full of so much wacky stuff in the medical world that like we should have probably all went extinct.
Yeah.
Well, but it gets even better. Well, it gets worse. But like it gets worse because these
I
girls
think this is
started
your
to
favorite,
exhibit
Jordan.
these women started to exhibit symptoms of radium poisoning. So
Mhm.
like their jaws
wonder
would be
why.
rotting out of their head and their teeth would be falling off and they got extremely ill. And the doctors that were hired by the American Radium Company were paid off to claim that it was a syphilis outbreak, that all of these girls had been contaminated with syphilis and they had all gotten
Wait.
syphilis, and basically slandered these women, saying that they were ill for other reasons and that it was not the fault of the radium company because radium was completely safe.
Wait. Okay. I know those times were different then. but like people had to know syphilis patients, right?
Mhm.
And like they definitely didn't have their jaws falling off and rotten off, did they? I'm not familiar.
I
with
mean, I
syphilis,
don't
right?
know. I don't know what syphilis does,
I,
but they convinced a lot of the American public and a lot of these women and their families that it was syphilis.
Aurora
And
Borealis?
eventually the
Symptoms.
evidence did come forward that it was radium poisoning, and eventually some of these girls got justice, but a lot of them died before the actual court case went through, making the radium company accountable for the deaths of these girls.
Dang.
No teeth falling out or like parts of body melting off from syphilis, although it does
Although-
have some pretty nasty symptoms, so I could see how
It's
people
gnarly, yeah.
with little medical knowledge could be
Okay.
fooled.
Mhm.
Because it
Okay.
has like hair loss, swollen lymph nodes, extreme weight loss,
Yeah.
extreme tiredness,
Okay.
permanent organ damage, stuff like
Mhm.
that.
All right.
Which, well, and also the part of the reason that they picked syphilis to pin on these girls is because of the stigma that would come with it. You don't
Yeah.
want
'Cause
people
it's
knowing that your sister
It's a
has
sexually
syphilis. Yeah,
transmitted
Yeah.
disease.
it was horrible.
I really wish they would have completely bumbled the part of the red herring, and they would have been like, it's like common
It's
cold.
chickenpox.
Yeah. Dude looks at the girls with clear radium poisoning. Chicken pox, you said?
But yeah, the
Yeah.
radium girls. That is. I used to be absolutely obsessed with this case.
Oh god,
That is
anything.
pretty crazy.
Anything with radiation, just god, it's
Mhm.
so
Now, this seems like a fabulous way to transition to D&D again.
uh-huh.
Does it?
But this is actually super interesting. I think when we think about D&D in history, we, like I said at the beginning, we usually think like swords and armor and maybe magical creatures and stuff. But thinking about it in the light of the really odd moments of history,
Mhm.
I think could possibly really amp up RP and world building. Like how we have the Radium Girls and the Cannibal China Siege. Like, how cool would it be if your DM says, yeah, there was a point in history where there was a siege and people became cannibals because no one had create food or water prepared.
That's the origin of create food and water.
Yeah, or some creature or something inhabits a land and some group of people in the city have to work with it and around it and become super sick and the government covers it up. That could be super cool as well. Just replace it with, instead of radium or radioactive stuff, replace it instead with an aberration or something, That's the best way I think of when I think of a possible way to D&Deify this horrible tragedy story.
Or even if you wanted to, you could have like those kind of things be connected, like radiation and aberrations.
Mhm.
You could have
True.
it be a situation where those are in the same basket. You could have it because in Vivia, in my world, I still haven't completely determined the origin of aberrations. I've kind of roughly been like, yeah, it's the same as Forgotten Realms, where they're just from the far realm that's literally like outside of the universe and no one really knows where they're from. But also I've kind of been like, I don't know if I like that though, because I don't like to do a lot of stuff that normal D&D does for
Mhm.
its origins of everything. So I've been tooling with the idea, very similar to that, of it being like, yeah, aberrations are from like some sort of grotesque, horrible mutation that
Cronenberg.
happened, something
There
like
you
that.
go. It's the Radium Girls. The next time you see a beholder, ask her out.
No.
No?
For turns that people died.
I'm sorry. You're right. Beholders are a
People
very serious
die all
problem.
the time. No, I'm kidding.
No.
No, that was a tragedy. That sounds like a horrible incident.
Yeah,
Mm.
but
But at least it's
oh god,
remembered.
that made
It
me
is
think
remembered.
of the
Well, it's
Norm
responsible
Macdonald quote.
for a lot of, I can't remember the exact things that came about it. It's not like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire where like I can remember and correlate, but there
Yeah.
were several like regulations and things that were put in place because of the case.
Good. Also, a good part for like a world building thing is to be like, because of this horrible accident that happened, now we've made it to where you can't cast Sickening Ray on a whole factory of women
There you go.
or whatever.
Or just the
we
lesson
thought it would make
capitalism.
them work better.
Oh,
What the
oh
heck?
God.
That's the logic of the NPCs in world.
I don't
Whoa.
think that's how Sickening Ray works.
So in real world, we didn't know that the
Well,
radium
it
was
was
that
a
deadly.
threat. It was,
Dang.
We might have
Hate
to
when
cut
that
this part.
But yeah, to wrap things up, I'll talk about my next favorite one, which is still definitely like a travesty, like someone's life got ruined, but at least it was one person and not several thousand. People at home may not know or may not, I can't remember if I spoke, I think I've already said it. I am a psychology major at this point in time. I've been doing it for 4 years. I like it quite a bit. Psychology and history, it's pretty new. Psychology is pretty new. The oldest back we can really go was like Sigmund Freud, just about, unless you want to start, extrapolating, talking about the Greek philosophers. But I'm going to talk about a very special man. Special man. He's got a special spot in my heart. Phineas Gage.
He also has a special spot in his head.
You beat me to it. I was going to say it.
I was setting them up. For those of you at home that don't know the story of Phineas Gage, or perhaps you know the story, but maybe not the name, Phineas Gage was just like a railroad worker, and they were doing some blasting to get some, stuff off for their railroad to keep going. And Phineas Gage was working on the line. He was putting some railroad spikes down and stuff. And it's almost like a dang cartoon. I know this was a real serious incident, but it's really funny how exactly it happened, because he was sitting there working and someone was distracting him and talking to him. So he turned around and was talking back to them. And then the rock blasting blew a railroad spike into his head. It's like a cartoon where it's like, hey, Phineas, huh? Like, think fast. Like,
this
what?
Poor man.
I know. Miraculously, though, he survived. That's why he's a psych-related person, because he became such a hot-button thing of study, which is kind of rude, but they didn't like completely inhibit his life. I think they didn't put him in the lab and study him. They were just like, yeah, try living and we're going to watch you.
Well, this was also back before psychology had regulations of what you could and couldn't do to people, correct?
True. Like, this was like way back.
Oh, yeah, this was like the very beginning.
Yeah, the beginning. But they didn't, as far as I know, they didn't really tie him up and do stuff to him. I think they may have tried to do a lobotomy, but it didn't really work. Because
what else were they going to lobotomize?
That's the thing. I'm pretty sure they tried and it didn't work, because they were like,
that's how they figured it out. They were like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. So
it's just gone.
Yeah. He went on to live for 12 more years after this incident. However, everyone that had known him after the incident, was like, that's not him anymore, which is really sad.
I don't think you specifically went into detail about what exactly happened. You said the spike went through his head.
Well, it destroyed his frontal lobe, didn't it?
Yeah, it ripped out the frontal lobe of his brain, which for those of you that don't know, that's like where all of your main personality drive and function is located, pretty much.
And your impulse control.
I was going to say
your impulse control. So if you get rid of that, it just like completely changes you as a human being and makes you much more reckless and rude.
He was a very different person, and that's why he was so important when you think about it, because without him, psychology may have taken, it might have been another 100 years before we even figured out what anything else psychology related was. Sigmund Freud might not have been inspired to do his stuff. I don't know even if he knew about Phineas Gage, but he was a very important figure that allowed us to begin, questioning things like our brain.
The brain named itself.
Yeah, exactly.
It did name itself, if you think about it.
But I was having this conversation in my car on the way home today. I wanted to bring it up here on the floor because it feels almost exploitative at this point, but I have to bring it up because we are a D&D podcast, and we told you audio listeners, nope, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say. Phineas Gage and D&D.
I don't know how you would do that. I've said that for every one of
Taryn,
them.
it's time for your character's lobotomy.
No.
Well, Dylan, his character in Olympus, Hector, horrible wound. What?
You're not about to tell me that Hector is lobotomized, are you?
That's later. But no.
That's after the Raven Wings thing.
Well, we haven't really, it's been a while since we have talked about it. And, he wears a shirt, so it's not abundantly apparent all the time. He has a horrible wound on his chest.
Oh, yeah. I forgot he died.
Where he died. And it looks like a horrible pierce. Yeah.
Twinsies!
That's how his constitution modifier is negative. He decided to say it is represented by a physical marker of his body. That's why his constitution is low.
He does love to do that, doesn't he?
He does love to do that.
It so much.
It's a good way of keeping his characters unique. Because
wasn't that why Saladin's dex was so low?
Yes, Saladin's. Yep. In Saladin's backstory, Saladin was the introducer for a Sirak into my world because Saladin had been a cleric who had been dealing with a Sirak before any of you met him, and a
Yeah.
Sirak crippled one of his legs.
Yeah.
He really messed up one of his legs, and that's why he had a -2 to dexterity.
Yeah. And then for Hector, he was leading this mercenary crew, the Raven Wings, and they had a big battle that went horrible, and he got shot and stabbed in his gut and died, but then got brought back to life by some mysterious entity. Woo! He thought it was Athena.
It wasn't.
I'm
wasn't
surprised
Athena.
he and Arlo haven't bonded over dying the same way.
Right? But Phineas Gage, I want to say, what is to stop somebody from having a similar mentality to Dylan, where they're like, I want a physical reason for my character's low stat, you know? So if someone chose to do the Phineas Gage route where something breaks their brain, literally, is it intelligence, wisdom, or charisma?
I'm going charisma.
I was thinking wisdom.
We've got all three here.
Well, that's the thing. We have proof. I would like to point to Taliesin Jaffe for proof that you can be wise but not intelligent. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have all of your brain intact to be wise.
That's true. Caduceus was very dumb. But we love Caduceus.
See, as a psych major, though, you gotta take it with consideration. What is wisdom, you know? Mm-hmm. Impulse control was removed from him. Is wisdom and impulse control correlated? That's you gotta consider. But then at the same
time, are you gonna say, though, that without your frontal lobe, you could still have a positive intelligence modifier?
Well, I'm not really sure.
Because does the frontal lobe have anything to do with your fact retention?
I don't believe it really does.
Okay, I think in this situation then, what is happening is someone has managed to roll negatives on both their wisdom and charisma. And that is the only circumstance that can lead to someone saying, yeah, my frontal lobe is gone. Because it would affect both your charisma and your wisdom. Definitely. You can't just be like, but yeah, I'm still really charismatic, even though all of my inhibitions are just gone.
I will say, though, Phineas Gage, I don't know if you've seen this picture. This is also a hot button issue that charisma is somewhat tied to actual physical attractiveness. Phineas Gage, kind of a baddie, kind of a hottie. Look at his picture. Look at his picture.
I just didn't expect that.
I also want to say that someone, I don't know who, was like, hey, Phineas Gage, you're like a very important figure now. Here, hold this rail spike and we're going to take a photograph of you to live in the history books.
Oh, no.
And he said, yeah. And they did it. And that's his living legacy now, is him holding a rail spike.
Yep. God dang.
You see the picture now, right? He's kind of a baddie.
Yes, I see the picture. Stop calling him that.
I don't know. I maintain that it's purely a charisma thing. Because I feel like you could still have a positive wisdom stat, even if you're lobotomized. Well, because charisma.
That's a phrase. That's one of the ones that needs to be clipped right there.
That's a good one.
Well, because if you're talking about charisma and DNA, because it's more than just looks and stuff.
True, it's definitely more than that.
Because if you're thinking of, because you were talking about the impulse control and things like that being removed because of the lobotomy.
Yeah.
I feel like that would affect charisma more because that would affect your reputation more than anything else. I feel because you would still, I feel like you could still have wisdom and intelligence, but charisma, if you're gonna go streaking because you can, I feel like that'll give you a lower charisma score overall. If you're doing really stupid shit and being really rude to people,
rude.
that affects your charisma.
True. Yeah, I could see that.
That's why I think it's both wisdom and charisma. That
I think it can actually be anything.
Both.
I'm going through my class on behavioral neuroscience now. We're learning about parts of the brain and what they all do. I hate to be a little bit of a psychology superior person, but I really think almost every single stat can be affected by a certain prick of the brain.
That's true.
You can hurt the brainstem and your dex. Whoa, you don't walk straight anymore.
What you're telling me is, if I do that to any of you, you can tell me what will happen, Pertusit.
Actually, yes.
Okay, good. Good to know.
New subclass?
New subclass, the psychologist. That's a class.
Psychology major.
Yeah.
Subclass for what class?
I don't
what?
know.
Rogue? Question mark.
Actually, that would be very, very interesting if, like, no, because wait, I'm actually thinking about this now. If it was a rogue or a monk, because you know how, like, what was the
Whoa.
feature the feature that monks have? I don't
Don't
remember.
worry, everyone. I have this. I rolled a 23 to hit. Yeah, that hits. I'm gonna put a lobotomizing strike on it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Because it's okay, because you do a rogue with the battlefield medic feat. And
Yeah.
so, and there's a specific subclass that you take, and so you know, like, where to hit and where
True.
to stab
I just
to
can't get over.
incapacitate
Like,
your-
Yeah.
Not even lobotomizing them, like actually lobotomizing them, but the monk just hits them like so right, it just disables that part of their brain.
But
Like it's still in there, it just turns it off.
it'd be such a weird utility class. First off, go off, Jordan. Yes, Queen. Correct.
Never say that ever again.
Oh, sorry. Phineas Gage is a baddie. But imagine the utility of that subclass where it's like, okay, I'm gonna try and hit my brain just right so I understand Abyssal now.
Oh wait, I didn't even think
That
about
would
it
be
not being used.
interesting.
I
That
didn't
would
think-
be really interesting.
Language comprehension.
Oh my god. I didn't think about that not being used in a combat situation, being used to enhance other scores. Oh, dear
dude,
God.
There's so
Guys,
much
none
you
of us
do
can
with
read
that.
this. What do we do? Cut to the monk with their hands around the wizard's head. Are you sure that this is safe? Oh, trust me, I've done this plenty of times before. You take 42 points of bludgeoning damage. What would that even be? Bludgeoning that what? Is
Lobotomizing damage.
Psychic damage.
Truest.
That's
psychic
what it
damage?
does. It only does psychic damage.
Yeah, something like this is then how you get the DMs that say, well, in my world, you don't really have a brain. I follow the other belief that your brain is a separate self and it's not really present with you all the time. It's in its own realm.
What psychology bullshit?
That's from before the real psychology where we were all philosophers and we're like,
Oh
wouldn't it
yeah, I
be
learned about
crazy?
that one. I learned about that one. Yeah, that's right.
There was no science and they were like, bruh, it'd be wild, right?
Imagine having to take a psychology course.
I didn't have to. I did it by choice because I thought it would be interesting.
Nerd.
It'd be interesting. Imagine having to take a history course though.
I don't have to imagine that.
What?
God damn it, Levi.
Nerd.
At least mine's real.
Ah, dang it. At least mine can get me a job.
Mine can. It's just really hard and competitive.
It's a pyramid scheme.
Mine's not a
No.
pyramid scheme.
Yours is a pyramid scheme.
Sorry,
Mm-mm.
wait. That wasn't supposed to be a dig on
If
Levi.
you're
It was supposed to be a
talking-
dig on Jordan.
Wait, it was.
Oh, okay. Then I'm with you now. I side with you.
Or Ty. It can be both.
I'm still going with the Levi's in a pyramid scheme.
It's not a pyramid unless you're referring to the fact that archaeologists go and see pyramids. It's not a pyramid scheme.
How about a square?
We see squares too. Squares make up the pyramids.
No. Is that a scheme or is that just like a functioning job?
I
I don't
it's-
understand you.
it's a
A state of being.
TJ.
TJ.
Is
He
he the
knows the
square?
shapes. He knows
Is he,
shapes.
or
I
is he
don't
the
know.
circle?
Don't bring a third one in. Phineas. I gotta go see Phineas. Hold up.
Phineas will tell you the answer.
Octangle.
Editing Jordan. Edit this, Jordan.
What?
I ate the mic. Tell us something your mom doesn't know. Yeah, all right. Oh.
Wait, why are you
Did
calling
we?
for editing, Jordan?
I think we've gone over an hour.
We
Have
are?
we?
I don't
Yes.
think we have.
I think we have.
We're okay. Let's do the Titanic story and then we can.
I forgot about the Titanic.
We're gonna talk about the
story.
Titanic
Okay.
story.
Oh, I wanted to
Okay.
talk about how radiation was horrifying more, but we can do Titanic.
Oh, we can also talk about how horrifying radiation is.
Why not both?
Why not both? We can go.
Radiation caused the Titanic disaster?
No, it didn't.
Titanic caused radiation?
To be fair, the Titanic would not have crashed if they would have hit the iceberg head on.
That is
Truly.
yes, that is true.
Yes. So
Well, it would have crashed. It wouldn't have sunk.
Well, it wouldn't have.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it would have. People probably would not have died in mass.
yes.
Not if I had anything to say about it.
God damn it, Levi.
Hard pivot to new topic. You know, we've talked about RH, one of our favorites moments, but
Most interested in.
sorry,
We can't
interested.
say favorite.
No, many of these are my favorites.
We're not going to talk about something that I feel like we have a bit more intimate knowledge with. and that is the Titanic. Not because we were there necessarily.
You guys
You
weren't?
guys weren't?
Whoa, what the heck is going
I
on?
think just Pertus it wasn't, Jordan.
God damn it. Oh, he must have missed that.
I'm the
You missed
oldest
the memo?
one. Uh,
Taryn and TJ were there too.
True. No, I
Me
think
and
Dylan couldn't make it. Dylan couldn't make it.
Is that the day that he and I played Warhammer by ourselves?
I think
that
it was.
must have been it. I
Ah,
remember
that
we
was
we
it.
messaged both of you, and both of you guys were like, "No, we're busy today." You never told us why.
Well, you
Yeah.
also like didn't believe us that we'd found the time machine, and then like we lost it when the thing sank. So
Yeah, so now it's at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, that's why when I went to use it, I couldn't breathe.
wait, I think you wait. What were you doing?
I used my own personal one to go to the main one that, you guys sunk apparently.
You didn't prepare water breathing?
You didn't have water breathing prepared for Tuzet?
I'm sorry, I'm an artificer. I think. I don't know. This gaslighting's
No,
gone too far.
artificers can prepare. Wait, what did I just say? Artificers can prepare water breathing. My brain thought I said fartificers.
That's how you breathe underwater with the rank gas.
The Titanic.
The Titanic.
The Titanic.
Oh.
Jordan and I had gone on the same senior trip together to a
Indeed.
lovely little place in Tennessee called Gatlinburg.
No, this was Pigeon Forge.
Pigeon Forge, that's right. They're close together.
They're
I was
right
getting
next to
mixed
each
up.
other.
Yeah. We went to both, but
we
this
did
one's
both,
Pigeon.
but I think the museum is in Pigeon Forge.
yes, you're correct. I've been there I've been to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee many times. It's a popular family trip for me. There's a Titanic museum there that was not there when I was really young. It came out only like 2015 or 16. It's not that old yet.
Mhm.
But we went there on our senior trip, and we went there with a couple other people that were interested in it because the alternative was indoor skydiving, and I didn't really want to mess with that.
Yeah, no.
It was also super expensive to go there.
This
Um,
is true.
Titanic Museum, though, is pretty fun. They built like a whole replica of the Titanic, not full size.
Mhm. Well, some parts were. You got to go through like I think they remade like the grant, like the entry hall.
Yes.
And you got to see like what the cabins were like. It was very cool. It was a very
It was-
cool museum.
very pretty, very cool. And I like the way they all set it up.
Mhm. The tour guides were also very helpful.
Yes. I would say they were. Yeah, I was on my senior trip at the time. We were having some silly fun. Titanic Museum was fine and cool and stuff, but I was much more interested in being silly and having fun. So me and another guy that was on this trip, we'll call him DL, he and I decided, hey, we can either listen to the normal tour guide explain the Titanic, or we can listen to the kid version. Well, me and Mr. DL were of one mind on this topic. The kid version was the way to go. So for the whole time, we listened to the kid version of the Titanic, the story of the Titanic, which had some lovely characters. Like the whole story of us traveling to the Titanic on there, which it had a story for kids, was we had to find one of the really rich people's missing dogs. And along the way, we encountered Mr. Electricity. You'll never guess what they did.
I missed this. Because I listened to the actual tour
Why
like an
do they
adult.
even have a kids tour version
I
of the
don't
Titanic?
know.
I listened to the actual tape accompaniment, which was very interesting, and we learned a lot of things about the ship and the history around it, and a lot of the people that were on the ship. And apparently,
Like Mr. Electricity?
apparently, producers learned about Mr. Electricity.
And
No,
Fufu.
his name is Mr. Electricity. Don't call him Mr. Electric.
You have no idea. Like, if you've ever watched, I can't remember the director's name, but the guy that makes Spy Kids,
Mm-hmm.
like his over-the-top cheesy editing.
Yeah.
When we met Mr. Electricity, the tour guide was like, "Oh, look, now we're going to meet a new friend, an invention at this time period. We have, here he is," and then it went. Like in the most cartoony PS2 sound effect, and it was like, "I'm Mr. Electricity." I was like, "Is this the amazing
Mr.
Spider-Man?"
Electric was played by Jack Black.
Exactly. Don't you remember that, Levi? Like we were saying earlier,
What?
go on to the Titanic.
Oh,
Remember
Yeah.
seeing Mr. Electricity?
yeah, totally.
But overall, this museum was great and a fun time. And we got the
Yes.
little like cards we got to figure out. You and DL were brothers, weren't you? Or was that him and
Oh, I think we were. Yeah, we were the brothers. Yeah.
yeah. It was very cool.
When you go to the
Mystery on
museum,
Titanic?
I don't know if we can spoil the Titanic Museum. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a well-known part of it. You're not allowed to take pictures inside the museum, but everybody knows about like the carts. That's like one of the
Yeah.
draws of the attraction.
Yeah. So you get like the card, and it has a name of a passenger of
And
the
a little
Titanic.
bio. It's cute.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
And
It was
they
very
have a
cool.
giant wall at the very end, and so you get to go and see what happened to your passenger.
If you
So
died
can
or
see if
survived.
they survived, or like what happened afterwards. If they
Yes.
survived, what they go on to do.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
It was
very
really cool. Now, the other big takeaway about the Titanic
And
Museum,
we got to the gift shop.
we got to the gift shop. Now, there's a lot to be said about the idea of a Titanic museum having a gift shop in the first place.
I got a coffee mug.
What I find much more noteworthy, though, is the contents of said gift shop. You know, it could be memoirs or journals or just the photos. There were two really big takeaways from it for me, though. The first of which had to do with this was actually very sweet. There was a kid that built, I believe it was a whole Lego sculpture of the Titanic. It was scaled to a certain size. It's massive.
It was very big.
Very impressive. And if I remember correctly, a book was written either about this kid or by this kid that was called like My Autism and the Titanic. But I believe it was the kid discussing, you know, his love of the Titanic, the story of the Titanic.
Yeah, I remember that exhibit. Like, well, it was like an exhibit. They had like a model of it,
Yeah.
and they had like a blurb about it. Was that was cool.
It was cool. It was very cool. Especially that got featured in a museum. I would kill to have anything I made as a kid featured in a museum, but I probably shouldn't because those were awful. But the second big takeaway, though, which Jordan knows all too well.
Okay, wait. I have one more thing before the big. Also, a big thing in the. I was surprised and very pleased that they didn't do this more throughout. The movie Titanic was featured very heavily in the gift shop, and some of the souvenirs that were featured were replicas of the stupid necklace from the from the Titanic movie. There was some like movie merchandise, which was like, yeah, that's to be expected. But also My Heart Will Go On was playing outside of the museum.
That's right.
And I was like, this. Why?
I forgot about that.
Although I think the only thing that they had in the actual museum from the movie was I think they had one of Rose's dresses. Yeah. Which I mean is fine. That's cool or whatever. But I was very glad they didn't focus more on the movie during the Titanic museum tour. Okay, now get to the big.
Okay. So those of you audio listeners, visual watchers, love and hate respectively. Imagine you go to a Titanic museum. We all know the Titanic, horrible national tragedy, incredibly well known. Best way to remember it? Titanic Museum had a great idea. Titanic plushie.
It made boat noises.
You squeeze it and it honks. This is a real product that I definitely bought as soon as I could.
He squeezed it for the rest of the trip. You would just be in the cabin that we were staying in and just hear it was just generic boat noises. And wasn't the text on the side of it wasn't just like generic sans serif font?
Yes, or it was Comic Sans, I think. Actually.
Oh yeah, no, it was Comic Sans. That's correct. It was Comic Sans. What a way to commemorate a national tragedy.
All the people died. This is what they died for.
Oh no!
And I can say this with complete irreverence because I'm not the one that made the plushie.
True, you were the one that bought it.
Yes, before they took it off the shelves for being so insensitive.
Did they? Is it not there anymore?
I went 2 years later and it was still there. So I'm hoping it's still there.
Oh my god!
You have any thoughts about that, Levi?
It sounds like a place I'd really want to go visit, not for the gift shop, but because I think it would be a cool historical attraction to go see. I just can't believe they did that. I can't believe they did those people like that.
They did.
Which is why we are going to launch our own line of merchandise where we make plushies of more national tragedies.
I thought we were making NFTs.
They're the same thing.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah. Just don't squint too hard. You'll see the difference between plushie and NFT.
Does it have to be specifically United States national tragedies, or could it
Oh
be
no,
other
dude.
countries' national tragedies?
We could have all the ones we mentioned here today.
Because I want to touch back on radiation for a moment to talk about
Chernobyl.
what's probably, yes, the worst known radiation incident in history, Chernobyl.
Yeah.
We're going to make a Chernobyl plushie.
Yeah, and
With
they
With the
can.
elephant foot, the
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was about to ask, is what would it be a plushie of?
is the elephant foot.
Oh,
We can have a normal one, and then we can have a what was that, Netflix or HBO Chernobyl one?
I think it was
an
HBO. Yeah.
It was actually a very good miniseries. Highly
Oh
recommend
yeah,
anyone
it
to
comes
watch
highly
if you want
recommended
to.
by my father.
I didn't watch it. I need to watch it.
Very, very good with the facts, and shows you why Chernobyl is not representative of nuclear power. But long story short, I just want to go back onto the topic of how absolutely horrifying radiation is to the human body. Probably what I think is the I just hate. I especially felt this when I was watching the HBO show, because it's like when you know someone is not safe.
Mhm.
HBO, it's not a horror show at all, but it has that feeling to it.
It builds that
That
dramatic
like
tension.
it gives you this lump in your stomach because you're someone in the 21st century who has context. And so you know every single one of these people are in horrible danger. And it's like, this is what I was going to say, is those first moments when the reactor explodes and the power plant is on fire and the firemen show up. And they start getting their hoses out and spraying everything. And they're looking at the explosion. They're looking over all the debris. They're like, oh my God, what happened? And then one of them looks to the other one and he goes, do you taste iron? And then it cuts away. It just cuts away. And you're like, oh my God. That's because you know he's dead. You know, if you know how radiation works, you know he's dead. If you taste iron from radiation, you're gonna die. Yeah, radiation is absolutely horrifying, and people that do anything with it have my utmost respect, because we would never know how horrible and awful it could be to this day if people did not subject themselves to the absolute closest thing I would say to Lovecraftian horror that we have discovered in the real world, which is the effects of radiation on the human body, like the Curies.
I was about to say, isn't Madame Curie's grave still radioactive?
I believe so. But yes, they both subjected themselves to multiple radioactive substances in the name of science, massive respect to them, and the US scientists who did all the crap with the Demon Core. Do either of you know what the Demon Core is?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so the Demon Core,
Oh boy.
and for all of you listeners, watchers out there, if you don't know what the Demon Core is this piece of metal, and it's I don't remember the exact. It's a radioactive material. I'm pretty sure it's plutonium, and it's like a those Russian nesting dolls. You know those?
Yeah.
Well, it's basically like one of those. So there's a giant outer shell of metal, and then there's the plutonium core in the middle. I forget what the outer shell is made out of, but it's made out of like a non-radioactive substance. And the only way you get the plutonium to react is when you completely close this metal on top of it. So if this metal is not closed on top of it, there's absolutely no danger. Nothing will come of it. It cannot harm you.
It's closed twice.
It gets closed twice in its history.
Both were accidents based on human error because humans are stupid.
Yes, because the way it was designed, the original scientists were like, okay, here's a system we're going to use so that it can never kill anyone ever. And then the people who experimented on it after that didn't use that system. Basically, there was this whole setup where you had to stick a pin in it so that it would always be so close to being shut that you could test the reaction that was going on without doing it so much that it would kill people. But the scientists that got their hands on it later decided, you know what? I don't care about this pin. I'm going to jam a screwdriver in there.
Mm-hmm.
Real thing. He would use 2 screwdrivers and test, whittle the screwdriver up and down to test the reactions. And the time that killed the man, he, just kind of accidentally slipped and the thing closed, and it was closed for, I think, half a second is the time. And he immediately flipped it off. And the first thing he said to everyone was, all right, everyone, mark where you are with chalk so that we know what happens to the people at certain distances. We're all going to be dead in like a week.
Oh. Well, how about that?
And they were all like dead in a week. And they marked all their distances and everything to know like the effects of the radiation from such distance in the room. And I don't think the Demon Core ever was allowed to be experimented on ever again after that. But it was very well known for its distinctive blue flash that occurred when plutonium has like a reaction. It lets off a blue light. So when it closed, it would flash really brightly blue for a moment, and then everyone knew they were dead. If you see the blue flash, you know you're dead.
Well, that's
just a couple of radiation things that have happened in history that are pretty well known.
I have one more fun radiation fact to close us out.
Oh yeah.
Do you either of you know about uranium glass?
I know about uranium and
Yes,
glass, but not uranium glass.
I know about uranium
glass, and the fact that it did not end production until 1958.
Yep.
Because it is actually completely safe, surprisingly, and it glows, and it's actually highly collectible, and you can sometimes find it in thrift stores.
Yep.
It's actually very interesting, and the glasswork is actually very pretty. It was created in 1830.
I can't tell if I'm being gaslit, and is it actually safe?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, let me like double check, but I'm like 90% sure that's like the thing is it looks like it should kill you, but it's fine.
Okay. As this was going, like it didn't stop until 1958 and it's still being collected. I thought this was gonna be like and yeah, people still die all the time after buying it. And I was like, oh no.
Well, it's because hold on. I'm trying to I'm also looking it up
with the uranium being depleted and not having any radioactive material in it anymore. Or at least not enough to kill you. Because if you don't know, there's always background radiation everywhere, and technically all of us are slightly radioactive at all times. So there's a level of radiation that we can all accumulate without actually getting hurt by it.
Impossible.
Also, I'm incorrect. It did not stop production in 1958. Uranium was deregulated in 1958. That's what it was.
Oh. Dang, that'll be awful if it turns out to be harmful. Which would be crazy if it still did now, because I think we're pretty on the up and up of this stuff now.
Yeah. For those of you who want an in-depth explanation as to what actually occurs when you get hit by radiation, pretty much what it does is it makes your cell be like, oh, I gotta make more of myself. This is from what I remember. I might be completely wrong.
I'm never getting an X-ray again.
I know the last part is completely true, but the first part might be not, which is your cells are like, oh, I gotta make more of myself. And then your cell like depletes itself of energy so rapidly that it's like, wait a minute, I gotta kill myself. So all of your cells just start rapidly killing themselves. And that's how you die, is mass cell degeneration.
And on that note, I'm gonna have nightmares tonight.
That's pretty interesting, you know.
X-rays are one of those things though that like it barely gives you any radiation at all, and that's why you don't need to worry about them.
That's what they said about the Radium Girls. Hi, this is Jordan from Nat One Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode you just listened to, and we hope that you come back for more soon. If you'd like to keep up with the zany shenanigans of our lives and the different things that we do, you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Castbox, and Anchor. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And hey, thanks.